Welcome to Kevin Richards VIPs. As a father, I can't imagine the tragedy of an illness fallen upon my child. This week's guest is an amazing man who has persevered through the struggles with love. We get to know Mark Campbell. So I'm standing here with Mark Campbell at Archie Goodall Park. This is an old park. Mark, I got to ask you, why in this, of all places in Barrie, did you choose this park? Because it's kind of an old park.
Well, I grew up in this area. I've been in Barrie since 1967, since I was a little toddler.
Wow.
And I spent a lot of time at this park. This is where I cut my teeth and cut a lot of things, actually, at this park.
Well, we were just joking a few minutes ago about this little mound over here behind you where there used to be one of those little spinny merry-go-rounds, kind of like the one at the drive-in. Kid namer.
Yeah.
But it was, as you said, it's a rite of passage for us to fall off those and get bonked.
Yeah, it was a total rite of passage. It was just over here, and the big kids who lived across the street would spin us, and you'd save up the years, work up the courage to finally get on it, and man, would you get hurled off.
Yeah, for sure. Now, so you lived in the area, obviously.
Yep.
You went to school where?
At St. Mary's, not far from here.
All right.
Good Catholic boy.
There you go. Yeah, because Catholic makes you good. I guess, I don't know. So, so we're here in the park, and there's a little bit of noise going on in the background, so I apologize for that. But you have been a Barrie guy for most of your life. You've been involved in a lot of different things. I'll get to some of the charity stuff that you've been involved in later. But first of all, you grow up in Barrie. You've got a family that grew up here. You got involved in the car business pretty young, right?
Yes.
How old were you when you got that going? Because that was Campbell Auto Sales?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I probably got my sales license when I was 18 years old. Mm-hmm. And so been doing it for a little over 30 years. Mm-hmm. And it's kind of in my blood. My father was a used car salesman.
Mm-hmm. But again, we get to laugh at that. And you're one of the funniest guys I know, too. And so you keeping a straight face talking to me is sort of strange for me, because I've known you as by far one of the funniest guys I've ever met. So when you say you're a car salesman, people will sometimes be like, oh, used car salesman. But you did it with a lot of ethics and class, right? You guys, I would think so.
I like to think so. I've sat on boards. I sat on the board of our governing body, which is OMVIC, it's called, and I currently sit on the board of the Used Car Dealers Association. So I like to think I've done the best. I've never knowingly sold a bad car. If you sell enough used cars, eventually you are, just by numbers. You're going to sell a bad one, but you do your best to fix it and make it right. But I like to think I've done my best. I can still walk around town with my head held high, and people will come and say hi and not try and shoot me.
Well, that's good. Well, you don't want to be that guy that you rolled a lemon off the curb knowingly and being like, all right, well, good luck with that. I'll see you next week.
Yeah, and it's a problem in our industry still to this day. It's getting cleaned up and it's getting better, but and we all know who the bad apples are, and so. Yeah.
Well, being on OMVIC too, you get to know what are the curbsiders, right? Yeah. And there's a lot of those curbsiders. You get some mechanic who suddenly goes from having 2 or 3 used car, in front of his shop to having a dozen cars to 20 cars, and suddenly he's selling cars. Yeah. Or you've got big auction companies that aren't putting cars in their names, and there's a lot of people with loopholes. Right?
Yeah. You always hear the story of, well, you're allowed 6 a year or 10 a year. What's the number? And the reality is you can't sell any other than your own personal car. Otherwise, you're a curbsider.
Yeah, and that's dangerous to the consumer for sure.
100% it is. Right.
So, Campbell Auto Sales becomes this big deal, right? And you were there. Did your brother Mike work with you there?
No, he was never in the car business.
Okay, but it was you and your dad.
Yep.
All right. And so this sort of transition goes from you being a car salesman. At what point did you start getting more community involved? Because you got into Rotary, pretty young, right? Yep. So what else did you get involved in, and what are some of the things that you've helped with Rotary?
Well, so to back it up, first of all, the reason for the involvement, my mother was a real ferocious volunteer.
Good.
Always volunteered her time. Canvas in the old days when they go door to door for the cancer fund, volunteered at RBH, was always the person helping friends and family, driving them to appointments when they're elderly and all this stuff. So you learn that growing up. Like your mother is a wonderful volunteer.
Oh, yeah.
So you learn it by osmosis, right? And then one day when you get to be in business, you think, I should try and give back to the community that's done me so well. Mm-hmm. So you start volunteering. And shortly, very quickly, as you can attest, you learn that, wow, do you ever get a lot out of volunteering?
Well, there's a great old quote, and I tagged you in this one time too, and it's that takers may eat better, but givers sleep better.
Yeah.
Right? Yep. For sure. And so thank you for your contribution to the community. So you've been with Rotary now for how long?
Since 2000, so yeah.
And so you've been involved with the Kids Fishing Day and all those sort of fun things.
Yep.
Right?
Yep.
So what's your favorite event that Rotary does?
Well, it's one that we don't do anymore. That was called the Beaver Festival.
Oh yeah,
right?
the Great Beaver Race.
And exactly.
Yeah.
And it was funny because that actually was a big wake-up call for me, because I got so involved in that. And Oprah talks about life balance, right? So work balance, all this stuff. So I knew I was off kilter with too much volunteering and too much Rotary one day when my wife said to me, when Liz said, I wonder if I was to get Ava and myself registered as a charity, could you spend some more time with us then?
Oh.
I was like, I think I'm spending too much time volunteering and not enough time. So I've that's all been fixed.
Speaking of your wife, you've got this superstar, supportive wife. Liz is fantastic,
Yes.
and I can tell that she adores you like crazy. She's a big fan of you, and you met her when?
So we've been married for 21 years. So yeah, I would have met her in the early 90s through mutual friends,
Yeah.
and here in Barrie. And I think probably at the Queen's, like everybody else. Who knows?
Queen's another rite of passage for sure, right?
Right. And yeah, she's a wonderful, wonderful woman who has just embarked on a new career in real estate and is killing it, doing really, really well.
Good for her. Good for her. Well, good luck to that.
Yeah.
So you transition into a bigger scale car dealership. Everything kind of goes busy, busy, busy. Your life is, you got the lion by the tail, tiger by the tail, right? So you're flying. And all of a sudden, you've got this beautiful new little girl in your life.
Yep.
Ava.
Yep.
All right. How does all this change your life? Because now you're a dad who's, been to the Queens and you see what guys can be like. And now you've got this beautiful little girl. And there's nothing more life-changing for a man than a little girl.
Yeah.
Little boys, sure.
Yeah.
Because they wind up like us. And But little girls, they've got your heart, the first time you hear that heartbeat, you see them, right?
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about her coming into your world. How's that changed you?
So it was late in life. I was 40. So and we we were married a long time, and it was never a right time to have kids. And so then it sort of happened, and she came along, and it was like, oh crap, now I gotta act like a grown-up and be a daddy. And fortunately, it came natural to me, as it turns out. And it was life-changing. I can't imagine anything. I mean, it's my sole purpose. Everything else is second, third place, like by a mile too.
Yeah.
It's
so it should be.
It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, it's there's nothing like it. Some people don't enjoy parenting, and I see that, and I sort of go, really? How did you not enjoy this? This is awesome.
This is something you co-created, and you've got this wonderful gift, right? And what better way to have somebody in your life that you get to share things you knew growing up, you get to be a part of their day and their life, and educate them on, just everything. There's nothing better than being asked questions that just make you die laughing.
100%.
So this little girl comes into your life. She's changed your life. You start to become a dad, and now you've got this big family bond. Something very traumatic and very sad happened, though. At what age with Ava?
So she was 1 year old in 2009, in January of 2009, when we got the diagnosis that she was diagnosed with leukemia.
Wow.
And so obviously it changes your life. It changes. It's like a punch in the stomach, and and here we are now. She's 9 years old, and fortunately for us, we have a good, happy story because she's with us and she's thriving and she's doing well. But there's a lot of water went under the bridge to get us where we are today.
Well, let's sort of unpack that a little bit, because that's something that I think I'd like to share with you, or have you share with us.
Sure.
How did you find out? She was pretty young. I know later on in life it's kind of easier for people to tell you when they're not feeling well, or things hurt, or things are making them sick. But she was pretty young. So where did that first sign come from?
So she had a cold and a fever, and she couldn't seem to shake it. And we'd been to, and we're not, we're very calm, reserved, relaxed parents. So we're not, someone who runs to the hospital right away. But this cold and fever kept going on and on. So we'd been to the hospital 2 or 3 times, and then it was around Christmas time that we had taken her into the hospital, and they said, well, they said the words white blood cell count, and we were just like, whoa. And there was a pediatrician on duty in the Emerge at RBH, and she said, no, don't go there. Don't go there. Don't do this to yourself. It's probably nothing. So we're in the hospital for a prolonged stay, and then one day I come in and I walk in and the nurses said, oh, the doctor's in there with your daughter and your wife, she wants to see you. So we go in and the doctor says, she's got leukemia. And it's just like everything goes into slow motion.
Yeah.
And you just, wait a minute, like that happens to other people.
So your chest sinks.
And you automatically, for me, the automatic reaction was, my daughter's gonna die. Oh my God, my whole world's gonna end. How I can't deal with this.
Yeah.
And then, you look back now and there's some humorous moments. Well, one of the things was my phone rang.
Yeah.
The minute she told me. I can't tell you to this day why I answered it. It was like I was on autopilot, and I answered it.
You're a business guy, yeah.
And Joe Givens from our Rotary Club,
Yeah.
who was president at the time, was calling to see how she was doing.
Oh, Joe's a good guy too.
And I never forget, I started crying, and I said, she's got leukemia. And Joe and I joke about this to this day, because I said, Joe, what, in hindsight, what an awful time to make that phone call. And he's like, holy cow, like I was like, what do I say, right?
Yeah.
So anyhow,
Joe's a sensitive guy like that kind of stuff too. He's a good dad, and he's, his heart's involved in that kind of stuff too. So he'd be choked up right there too.
Oh yeah, 100%. And we were tight. So, and then we had to go to the hospital. They said, okay, we're going to sick kids. They're going to look after things. But there was a blinding snowstorm and the highway was closed. So we had to wait until the highway opened.
Typical Barrie to Bradford drive.
Exactly. So finally, my wife gets in the ambulance with Ava, and I get in the vehicle to follow them. I turn the vehicle on, and the radio's on, and it's Tim McGraw singing "Live Like You Were Dying." And I look at the dash, and I'm like, "Are you kidding me? You're kidding me? This song's on?"
Yeah.
Anyhow, so it's those kind of moments now. Again, because my story ended well.
Yeah.
We get to look back and chuckle about those things.
Yeah. So that's a tough struggle too. So now you've got this daughter. Like, how did Liz handle it? What was the very first thing you guys needed to do to get ready for this? Because now it's not just, let's just get in the car and go to sick kids. It's how do you prepare yourself that first little while of getting ready, and what happens?
So sick kids are awesome, because what they do is it's very much a team. So their org chart is flat. The doctors aren't up here with any kind of God complexes, and the nurses down here. It's very much like this.
Nice.
So you get a team assigned to you. So we had 2 oncologists. We had a nurse, sort of coordinator or team captain, if you want to call it.
Yeah.
A social worker. In case there's any issues, because it's stressful times and some people flame out and they need help pulling it all together. So you meet with them and they start explaining to you what your life's going to look like for the next little while.
Yeah.
And they're wonderful.
There's no better place than sick kids to be
100%.
there. You're in the best hands.
100%. So, Liz was awesome. Like, that woman is the toughest woman I ever met in my life. She had a little cry for about 15 minutes, and then said, okay, we got work to do. Failure's not an option. We got work to do. We're going to get through this.
Awesome.
Tell us what we need to do. I sat around in the hospital for 2 or 3 days and cried boo-hoo-hoo. In my mind, nobody else in the world was going through any troubles, just me, right?
Yeah.
And then I walked around the corridor, and I couldn't sleep. So for 24 hours a day, I'd walk around the corridors of the hospital if I wasn't in the room with Ava, and think, boo-hoo-hoo, poor me. And I sort of had 2 aha moments, and it's too bad that everybody couldn't spend time at sick kids. So one was, there was a young girl, a teenage girl, coming through the hospital corridor, and I was sitting there feeling sorry for myself, and she was with a volunteer, and she was excited because she was going to prom. And as she got closer to me, I realized that what she was doing in the hospital is she'd been severely disfigured by a fire. And her face was sadly, it was you kind of would do this when you saw it. And I was taken back because she was saying, I'm going to do my hair, and I got this dress picked out, and I'm so excited. And I thought, okay, wait a minute. And later that afternoon, this mother and daughter got off of an elevator, and the mother was a East Asian woman, beautiful woman, and the little girl had a hood on, so I couldn't see her. Well, when she took her hood off, she was a beautiful little girl, probably about 9 or 10 years old. I don't know what her reflection was, but her head was the size of a China doll.
Oh.
And she was smiling and telling her, Mommy, we're going to go and we're going to do this and we're going to do that. And I thought, wait a minute. These people got I got to get my head out of my butt.
Like, because it's not about you.
It's 100%.
Yeah.
like enough. And I just said from that day forward, no more feeling sorry, no more wallowing.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man, you got to get on.
That's a great aha moment, because there are people who will always make everything about them. Oh, my son did this, and I don't want my son or daughter to ever be tested for this because it shows me as a failure. No, just stop it. Let your kids get tested. Let them get everything that the benefit of life.
Yep.
To make them the best kid they can be, right?
100%.
So they become the best adult, and then they send that on too, right? So that message from you, I'm sure Ava picks up on these things, right?
I think so. I mean, she's a tough girl, like really tough.
Yeah.
You know, gentle and kind and everything you'd want a woman to be. I see her growing into, but make no mistake, she's very much like her mommy. She's as tough as whale meat, and and it served her well through this whole thing. You know,
Yeah.
she's dealt with all the adversity with courage, but so much strength. I mean, I can tell you stories, you know, for hours and hours of the things that I've seen out of that child that you know, grown adults wouldn't be capable of.
So let's take this and just look at Ava for a second then. So what did Ava have to go through? What kind of tests, what kind of stuff? Because these things are going to pull at your heartstrings too, and luckily you don't have to witness a lot of the stuff that goes through, I'm sure, because it's just Dr. and Ava. But what sort of stuff did she have to do before she went through the next stage? What was the first stage for Ava?
So what happens when they identify it, there's it's roughly 35-day induction period where they blast the living bejeepers out of the leukemic cells.
How often?
If it's for 35 days, it's all day. There's a protocol. There's different drugs throughout the day, and it's full on. It's go.
Okay.
And in the old days, what they used to do is they would do this, and then they would check them on the. It's not always 35 days. Some are early rapid responders. Some struggle a little bit, and it draws out to 60 days. But then they would check them, and they would say, "Hey, there's no more leukemia. There's no more cancer cells. You're cured. Have a nice day. Bye-bye. Good luck with your life." The problem is cancer cells are really smart. So cancer cells would run and hide in your spinal fluid, which is separate from your body. So then they would wait until all the chemo is gone, and they go, "Oh, it's gone," and they would come out. So then a year later, maybe 2 years later, the kid or the person would come in suffering from a cold or something, and they would check them and say, "Oh my God, you're full of cancer again. Now there's nothing we can do for you because it's so far advanced." So what they've done now is, from years and years and years of research, they now have a protocol that says, okay, we do the induction, but then we have a 27-month protocol of chemo and they basically give you a binder and say, this is your life for the next 27 months.
Wow.
And we made a decision as a family that we have arguably the best pediatric hospital in the world, one of the top 4 in the world.
People fly from all over the world to come to sick kids.
So we just placed all our faith in them. At our first meeting, we sat down with the team, and we had talked about it, Liz and I said, listen to the doctors, I got a deal for you, I got a proposition for you.
Yeah.
And they said, what's that? And I said, if you guys promise to tell us everything, don't lie to us. If it's bad, we want the news. It will fall to pieces, make no mistake, but we don't want to be lied to. We want the whole truth of how this treatment is going.
Yeah.
And they said, okay, what's the quid pro quo? And I said, I will never type the word leukemia into a search engine on a computer again. And they said, oh, thank God. They said, deal, 100%.
Yeah.
Because the biggest problem in the medical industry today is self-diagnosis.
Well, they always call it sidewalk doctors and sidewalk lawyers, right?
100%.
Everybody wants to know. Yeah, Dr. Google. Oh, I'm in the first page of Google, and it's about every homeopathic thing or some sort of place in some third world country where you can go and get something done. Like, this is the real science.
Yeah.
And this is what you want the real answers for.
Well, and the biggest advice I would ever give anybody, if you have friends and family who have a sick child, is don't give the unsolicited advice. It's you think you're doing well, you think you're helping. It doesn't get received that way, because what happens is you go, wait a minute, like you didn't pay attention in school, and now you've Googled something and you're smarter than the world-class doctors at sick.
Yeah.
If it's okay, I'm just going to place all, and I think every family should, I hope, think the same way. It's going to place all my faith in sick kids, and good or bad,
they're the pros.
That's what my daughter deserves, and the outcome again for us was wonderful. So, they're just incredible. One funny thing was when she was first diagnosed, they came in and they said, okay, from 0 to 1 year old, we almost never, unfortunately, have a good outcome. And they don't know why, but for whatever reason, I don't know if there's not enough development or what's happened.
Yeah.
From 1 to 10, they almost always have success. Well, she was exactly a year old. So we said, okay, well, which is she? Is she 0 to 1 or is she 1 to 10? And they said, well, we have to do a test to find out. We've done the test.
Yeah.
So, okay, what are the results? And they said, well, we don't know yet. We'll tell you in a couple days. So you lie around and needless to say, you don't sleep. So then they come in and they said, okay, sorry, the first one was there's 2 types of leukemia, a good one and a bad one. Which one does she have? Well, we've done a test. We'll let you know in a couple days. So then that finishes, and she's got the good one. Great. But the 0 to 1, 1 to 10, where is she? Well, we'll tell you.
It's hard to say you've got the good leukemia.
We'll tell you in a couple days.
Yeah.
So we're sitting there one day, and my years of being in sales and knowing how to read people, we're in the hospital 2 days later in the room, and the nurse comes in and says, "Hey, the doctors want to talk to you. They've got the results." So there's 2 people on the team, 2 doctors. So they both come in. So when I saw them both come in, I said to my wife, "Oh, thank God she's 1 to 10." And they said, "Yeah, she is." How'd you know that? I said, because if this was bad news, you guys would have flipped a coin. There's no way you'd both come in.
Yeah.
And they said,
that
you're
makes
right.
Sense.
That's what we do. And I said, yeah, I mean, it's easy to tell, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, again, we were blessed, and then we started the battle. But it was, and it's funny because it was a journey that you'd wish on no one, but you wish on you almost wish people would have to go through it, so that they would see the blessing they have, and they would raise their children differently.
It's a whole different everything in life, you know?
Oh, I mean, the price to wisdom, right? The price of admission to wisdom is a haircut.
Yeah, for sure. So now you've got this little girl who's there, okay? What's the next couple years like? So you're spending time down at Sick Kids, all right? What's that like for you, for being a self-employed guy trying to run a business and doing your thing? And now your attention is 100% solely on your little girl and your family.
Yeah.
Right? What's the next couple years like for both you and Ava?
So what happens is when they're little, especially like that, when they diagnose them, they say, okay, one of you can't work because she's a toddler and she needs 24/7 care. So Liz wasn't working, but she was about to enter the workforce again. Ava was 1 year old. She was about to enter the workforce again. Now she can't. And yeah, you're right. I'm a self-employed guy. My business blew up just previous to that. So already things were tough.
Yep.
And I was back selling cars again. And as a commission salesperson, it's all about where you are mentally. And when you're struggling like that, it's tough. You know?
Well, it's humbling for sure. Humbling in business. But again, no matter what, you'd rather be taking care of your child no matter what happens, no matter where you are.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yep.
So before I go further on with, the later years, I want to know, what's it like for you when you're being self-employed? It's not easy to put money together to take care of this, because people don't understand that OHIP covers so much. But there's a lot of stuff that when somebody's going through leukemia treatment and chemotherapy or radiation, somebody's got to write a check.
Yeah.
So what's that like on your pocketbook? You got to give me an idea of ballparks.
So here's what I've learned is that you want to be one of 2 things if you have a child diagnosed with cancer. You want to either, I hate the word poor, but be very low income, or you want to be very well off. You don't want to be middle classes, which is where we were, because the government decide that as a middle class person, you can pay for this. And so there's really no programs in place for you.
Yeah.
Now, in our case, we had wonderful family and community support.
Yeah.
So that, and I guess maybe that was a bit of karma for all the volunteering we had done. And the community our community of friends and family and business community came through in a big way to really help us. And honestly, I don't know how we would have made it otherwise. And how do you say thanks for that? I mean, it was incredible, very humbling. The male ego is a strong thing, right? I didn't want help.
We're men, we make fire, we hunt, we do our thing, we're supposed to provide. And when that providing sort of aspect comes out, it's hard to be, your confidence gets beat up.
I didn't want help. And then finally it dawned on me that I wasn't being fair to my girls, that I had to check my ego and put it in the box and leave it be, because we weren't making ends meet. I remember one day we had one drug where the pharmacist came out and said, look, here's the situation. She's going to need this drug, and it's going to be for the next 10 to 12 months. And do you have coverage? And I said, yeah. She goes, okay, so here's the thing.
Which is a plus, because not everybody's got coverage either, being
100%.
self-employed.
So I go down to Sick Kids. They have a pharmacy on the main floor, and I give them the thing, and then they call me. I get a pager, and an hour later I go down and I pick it up, and the girl says, well, that'll be $950. And I said, oh no, I have a program. I have coverage. She goes, yeah, I know. That's with the coverage. I said, well, how much would it be if I didn't have coverage? She said, well, it's $4,000 for this prescription. I said, oh, wait a minute. This is for the full year. You've given me the full year. She goes, no, this is going to be monthly, Mr. Campbell. And I was like, $1,000 a month?
That's a mortgage payment for some people.
Holy cow.
Yeah.
And that was just one drug. There was lots of those. We had one where so it's comedy of errors, right? So she got a blood clot. So then she had to have these enoxaparin, it's called. So she had these blood thinners.
Yeah.
So it's very expensive. It's about $400 or $500 a month for this. So she was on it for about 10 months, and then they decided she doesn't need it anymore. And we had just bought a prescription. I think, if I remember correctly, you bought it a couple months at a time. So we had about $800 or $900 worth of enoxaparin. Yeah. And they said, she doesn't need it anymore. So we called Candlelighters, which is a wonderful organization in Barrie, and said, hey, anybody need any enoxaparin? And they were like, yes. So they came and picked it up from us.
Good.
2 weeks later, we go in for a checkup. They check this and that, and they go, oh, wait a minute, the blood clot's not as good as we thought it was. She needs to go back on enoxaparin.
Well, I hope people take a chance to take a look at Candlelighters too, because that's a great
They're
cause.
wonderful.
Wonderful people.
Barb and Cheryl at Candlelighters and the rest of them, they're so good for the community.
They're not well known right now, and they really should be better known. So I'm glad you mentioned them.
Yeah,
so thanks for that.
Yeah, they're awesome.
So now you've got all this money that you've got to put out, and then of course you get the wonderful comedy of errors that you've got this. Oh, we need it. We still need it. Wait, we need it back. What's that like for you, trying to pay for that? Like, what's your, other than your attack on your ego and your pride, being a man?
Yep.
I get it. What's that like for you with Ava? What's Ava witnessing through all of this? What's she seeing through this for the first couple of years?
So we were really good about any breakdowns and any meltdowns. We seem to have this thing where if Liz was up, I was down, and if Liz was down, I was up.
Yeah.
And we would never have any of those moments in front of Ava. So I see people at the hospital when I go in for checkups now and again, and I can tell them, people who have just gotten the news, they have the look.
Yeah.
And I get asked occasionally, I'll see a father who will come up and ask me a couple questions, and I say to them, it's like, I don't know how we did it. We were blessed, we were lucky, but the biggest thing I can tell you is you can't show them fear.
Yeah.
We're their rocks.
Yeah.
Mom and Dad are everything to them.
For sure.
Mom and Dad are scared, they're going to be scared. If
they have to feel safe.
100%. If Mom and Dad give up, guess what? They're going to give up.
Yeah.
So we never showed her any fear. No matter what was going on, if one of us was having that day, the other would say, get the heck out of here and go feel sorry for yourself somewhere else, because it's not in front of her. You're not doing this.
Well, you've had some really great messages on the show, Mark. What's it like when you get to hear that bell? Did she get to ring a bell? Did she get to do that?
So they get bravery beads every time they get any kind of a treatment. They get these string of bravery beads. She's got probably thousands of them at home. For us, like she relapsed. So she was good at 3.5, and then at 4.5 she relapsed and had to go through a second protocol, another 3 years. Yeah. So in Thanksgiving weekend of 2014, she was cleared. Yeah. And it was funny because we were driving up the highway, and it dawned on us that just out of the blue, you're the holidays, nothing, like all of a sudden nothing's going on in life except what you're going through. So, and it's not that you're feeling sorry for yourself, it's just all your focus is here. So Christmas comes and you go, oh, I gotta get some Christmas presents. Easter, all these things come and you forget all about them, and at the last minute you think, oh, I guess we should do something. Well, we're driving up the highway and we go, I go, is this Thanksgiving weekend? And Liz goes, yeah, it is. And I thought, wow, Thanksgiving will never be the same for us again, will it? In a good way. Like, just, I don't know how that happens, but that was the weekend that she was done and finished her treatments.
That's amazing. So now she's okay?
Very good.
Awesome. Yeah. So I want to thank you for sharing your story. I could probably talk to you for a lot longer. Unfortunately, it's a short show. So I want to thank you for your time, Mark, and all the best and all the love to Ava and to Liz and to your family, and best of luck with everything.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
Okay.
Cheers.